Hi everyone, welcome back to a new episode from DGMZ, diwan-e-ghalib-meri-zubaani. To all our returning viewers, we are very glad you could join us again. And for the new viewers, we are very happy that you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, today we are delighted, absolutely delighted, to announce this start of a new mini-series at DGMZ, first of its kind. The mini-series is dedicated to the love story of Layla and Majnun. Now, if you have been with DGMZ for some time, you would remember that in the past, during some of the diwan-e-ghalib Ghazal episodes, we had mentioned our desire and motivation to craft out a dedicated mini-series for Layla Majnun. And it has taken us some time to gather the resources to put together this mini-series, but we are finally here. So, why a DGMZ mini-series on the love story of Layla and Majnun? First things first, as DGMZ viewers, you know that DGMZ is a podcast dedicated to Ghalib, Mirza Ghalib, and more specifically to his diwan, his collection of ghazals. And when we go ghazal by ghazal every weekend, we come across ghazals in Ghalib's diwan where he quotes Layla Majnun's love story under different contexts. And in those episodes, we cover this story briefly and very contextually, driven by how Ghalib is pulling the story in his ghazal at that point in time. Having said that, those episodes do not allow us the time or bandwidth to get into the story in entirety. And that is where we had been looking for an opportunity for us and our viewers to get a chance to explore the Layla Majnun immortal love story in totality, focused content on the story and just the story. And this mini series is that opportunity. Also, in addition, the mini series wants to try answering some of the basic questions that come to mind when we read this love story. Questions like, who were Layla Majnun? Were they actually real people or fictional or combination of both? What kind of literature, documentation, records do we have of their existence? And then the last question, how did their lives pan out? What were the events in their lives which modeled this saga against a timeline? So hopefully the mini series will help us get into some of these questions, give us an opportunity to collate some insight and information around these questions. Moving on to among all the questions, moving on to the million-dollar question, who were Layla Majnun? The Layla Majnun story, it originated in 7th century Arabia, where it started appearing in oral legends, folk tales, and manuscripts, much before it was immortalized by the genius writer, the Persian poet Nizami Ganjavi. having said that, Layla Majnun's story is not just another famous romance or love story. And that is because of its strong spiritual element. Layla Majnun's story has two strong spiritual concepts, or we should say this story is used as an allegory for two strong spiritual concepts. Number one, the Udri love, and we will get into it. And number two, the Sufi mystical love. We'll get into that too. The mystical aspect of Layla Majnun's story stems primarily from these two concepts. And these are the two concepts which transform this old Arabic folk tale love story to this mystical romance. So let's get into these two spiritual concepts a little to understand how the story captures them. The first concept, Udri love. Now this concept is more clear and evident in the Arabic version of the story, the version where the story originated. So 7th century Arabia, it saw the emergence of the story as the tragic Udri love story of Qais ibn al-Mulawwah and his beloved Layla. Udri love and its poetic form Udri Ghazal take their name from the Arabian tribe of Banu, Udra. Udri love is characterized by a man's love and pledging of himself and his poetry to a single woman throughout his life, during which his passion will burn intensely for her and he will seek union or visal with her. इस वक्त वो बेदम शाह वारसी का शेर याद आ रहा है, राइट? उसको दुनिया और ना उकबा चाहिए, उसको दुनिया और ना उकबा चाहिए, कैस लैला का है, लैला चाहिए. So, like we were going through the Udri love, the lover will be dedicated to one single woman throughout his life. Not only the lover, his desires, his passions, and his poetry stemming from this love, desire, and passion will be dedicated to that one single woman. In Udri love, the love is usually requited, which means both the lover and the beloved equally love each other. And we are thankful for that, right? We are thankful for that. But Udri love is characterized by the fact that though the love is requited, for one reason or the other, the union of the lovers is prevented. Now, the reasons for this union being prevented can be internal to the lovers, as in the restrictions are self-imposed by the lovers on themselves, or it can be external, and usually it is societal. सारे इल्ज़ाम तो ज़माने पे ही हैं. सारे इल्ज़ाम ज़माने पे हैं. So basically, in Layla Majnun's story, their Udri love does not result in union, and the reason for that is societal. Again, एक शेर for this particular scenario. ईशा अल्लाह खां ईशा का शेर. लैला और मजनू की लाखों गर्चे तस्वीरें खिंची. लैला और मजनू की लाखों गर्चे तस्वीरें खिंची, मिल गईं सब खाक में, जिस वक़्त ज़ंजीरें खिंची. So basically, the love was famous, the love was passionate, the love was ruhani, Sufiana, Udhri, but Zamana intervened, right? Zanjeerein khichi, the societal chains did not allow them to come together. Now in Udhri love, coming back to the characteristics of this love, the unfulfilled need for union will lead to the suffering, torment, sickness, madness, and ultimately death of the lovers, often by death wish. Another very unique thing of Udhri love is that in Udhri love, the lover cum poet will be identified by the beloved's name. Therefore, Majnu Layla actually in Udhri love means Layla's Majnu. The lover belongs to the beloved. And this is a beautiful concept. This is a beautiful concept, and DGMZ Miniseries pays ode to this in its title, Layla-e-Majnun, Layla ka Majnu, not Layla and Majnu, which is the usual way we would address this couple, but Layla-e-Majnun, Layla ka Majnu. Just emphasizing the fact that you cannot talk about one without talking about the other. You cannot talk about the lover without talking about the beloved. It's almost not allowed. If you want to talk about the lover, the beloved's name has to be there. तस्वीर का ये शेर, मोहब्बत अब तलक रखती है ये तासीर मजनू की. मोहब्बत अब तलक रखती है ये तासीर मजनू की कि बिन लैला नहीं खिंचती कहीं तस्वीर मजनू की. Majnu does not exist anywhere without Layla. Moving further with the Udhri love and its characteristics, there is this chaste characteristic of Udhri love, which is grounded in the religious and moral principles of Islam. Number one, Ifa translates to chastity or restraint. And number two, Zud translates to abstinence. Other common themes in Udhri love are the poet cum lover is destined by God's eternal decree to love the beloved. ये ऊपर से उसकी किस्मत में लिख के आया है. There is no escaping it. It might seem like a choice on the earthly world, but it is not. It is not. It is divinely guided. It is divinely mandated for the lover to love the beloved. Second characteristic in this section, the beloved will be idealized and idolized by the lover cum poet. So, beloved will be the all, be all, end all for the poet or the lover. And to such extent that the lover will land up giving the beloved the status of the Almighty, simply by just worshipping, revering her, showing her the kind of love and reverence which is meant for the ultimate God. So, that is another characteristic of Udhri love. Third, This love is eternal. This love is eternal, and by that we mean it transcends from the earthly world to the other world, from earthly life to life thereafter. This love does not end in the earthly realm. It transcends from the earthly realm to the world thereafter. And then finally, the union of the lovers will not happen in the earthly world. For one reason or the other, it will be prevented in the earthly world. The union will happen in the world thereafter, in life thereafter, in the other world. So, as you can see, whatever we know of Layla Majnun at this point in time, these Udri love characteristics do play out to the T in their love story. They do play out to the T in their love story. So that was the first spiritual concept that plays out so vividly in this immortal love story. Let's move on to the second concept, the concept of the Sufi love. Now, this concept, unlike the Udri love concept, which was more evident in the Arabic version, this Sufi love concept is more evident in the Persian version of the story. So, Nizami's version of this story uses the legend of Layla Majnun as an allegory to detail the soul's journey towards God, the ultimate beloved. In Sufism, the beauty of the created world is a reflection of the beauty of its creator, God Almighty. And hence, the beloved Layla, as the creator's creation, represents and reflects the beauty of the divine one and only God. For Cass, who is a seeker of the divine, on his path, Cass will leave behind the binding constraints of intellect and transform to Majnun, lost and intoxicated in the divine beauty of his beloved, but also suffering the separation from her in the earthly world. Majnun, like many seeking mystics, will shun the world, give up the world, and go and live in wilderness, often in a cave with a rock for a pillow and wild animals for company. And this is how Majnun, as many mystics, will fulfill the requirements of Zud, or abstinence. Zud, abstinence, are of three types. Number one, Killat al-Tam, minimum food. Number two, Killat al-Kalam, minimum speech. And number three, Killat al-Manam, minimum sleep. And when Majnun spends almost the biggest span of his life in the wilderness, he is fulfilling the requirements of Zud, of abstinence, of minimum speech, minimum food, minimum sleep. मीर तकी मीर का ये शेर इस वक्त एप्ट होगा। ना रो इश्क में दश्त गर्दी को मजनू, ना रो इश्क में दश्त गर्दी को मजनू, अभी क्या हुआ है बहुत ख्वार होगा. So the journey for the lover in Sufi mysticism is not an easy one. It goes through a very treacherous, very difficult path of abstinence and shunning all earthly pleasures, comforts, delights, expectations, and bringing oneself to a place, to a state where one can actually be a worthy receptor of pure divine love. Now, Nizami in his poetic saga glorifies this abstinence that Majnu went through, giving it a divine purpose of subduing the nafas or carnal soul, which in turn will free the lover from desire, allowing love to take over completely. This will ultimately get Majnu, the lover, to the state of fana, which is the annihilation of the self in the one, the truth, or the beloved. Ego no longer exists. So that gives us a very comprehensive insight into how the Sufi mysticism or the Sufi love has played out in the Layla-Majnun love story. And now we can probably grasp the mystical aspect of this story a little better, knowing the basic concepts that have played out in it. Now, like we mentioned, the story originated in Arabia, 7th century. But it got its fame and success and status of a masterpiece due to the Persian adaptation, which happened in about 9th century by the famous poet Nizami Ganjavi. You cannot find a Layla Majnun iteration, version, or adaptation without Nizami Ganjavi's influence. That is the impact his Persian adaptation has brought about in the literary world as far as the story goes. So it is worth her time to get a little insight into the creator, Nizami Ganjavi, because of course one will understand the creation better if there was some context about the creator in the background. So let's do that. Many Persian writers have written about Layli and Majnun. I say Layli because in Persian, the Arabic Layla becomes Persian Layli. So, like I was saying, many Persian writers have written about Layli and Majnun as early as the 9th century. However, it is the story adaptation by the Azerbaijani poet Nizami Ganjavi in 1188 from Arabic to Persian, which went on to become a masterpiece. Though Nizami's version is not the only one, it certainly is the most popular and comprehensive, bringing together multiple Persian and Arabic stories to craft his masterpiece. Nizami can be justifiably credited for bringing this unique love story to the world and by extension to us. In Nizami's own words, I have brought to such refinement my enchanting poetry, my name, the mirror of the world to come, will now be. So as you can see, um, the confidence, right? A very, very Galibana, if I may, right? That confidence about the quality of work, the status, the uniqueness of the work that he has done. He is very confident. He's very confident about it. And the mirror of the world to come, again, a very Galibana thing. Ghalib's poetry is also very forward looking. Even today, we find his poetry very forward looking and progressive. And we are already 150 plus years late, right? But I guess that is how geniuses work. What they write or what they create stands the test of time. It has a truth, a genuineness in it that will cut across decades, centuries, ages, and still come across very plausible, very real, very authentic. So, getting a little more into who Nizami was. Nizami, or Abu Muhammad Ilyas Ibn Yusuf Ibn Zaki Muayyad, was born around 1140 at Ganja in Azerbaijan. Nizami's parents, his father Yusuf and mother Raiseh, who was a daughter of a Kurdish chieftain, passed very early, leaving Nizami an orphan at a tender age. Nizami's love, yearning, and sorrow due to this huge loss left a deep impression on him, probably contributing to his steady, serious, and solitary lifestyle, devoid of most earthly delights. It is very thought-provoking to see how great tragedies and great losses apparently can create geniuses. It seems as if genius minds have this God-given gift where they are able to transform their pain and sorrow, their suffering, into something beautiful, something ethereal, something healing, something full of love and light, something like none other, a masterpiece. And isn't this kind of similar to the life story of Ghalib? A lot of losses, a lot of sorrow, a lot of pain, a lot of grief. In terms of family, in terms of loved ones, in terms of work, in terms of resources, so much lack and loss. And what does he do with it? He pours it into his work. He pours it into his work to transform it. It's like lead to gold. That alchemy happens where life has handed these people lead and they use their genius to convert it into gold. Just alchemize it into something totally different, out of this world. Yes, that does come across in Nizami's story too. So moving on. Towards the end of 12th century, Nizami composed the third Masnavi as part of his Khamsa, a quintet, also known as Panchganj, 5 treasures. So Nizami had this Panchganj, 5 books or poems, Masnavis, and one of them was Layla-e-Majnun. Layla-e-Majnun. So before we move on, let's quickly get into what a Masnavi is. This is a poetry form which is used to write epic ballads or romances, where each couplet will have a different rhyme, with both lines rhyming, allowing the poet greater freedom to write a longer description on the subject at hand. And back then, Arabic, Turkish, Urdu, many languages, many cultures used the Masnavi poetic form because, like we just read, it allowed them to write longer descriptions. So all these stories and ballads and romances could be written very well in this form, vis-a-vis a ghazal or a nazm where you are restricted. You are restricted by a pattern and by the amount of words you will use. Not so in a Masnavi. So coming back to the story, how did Nizami come around the task of writing this? So as the story goes, it was the ruler of Shervan Shah Akhistan I, a Shah who sent a letter to Nizami requesting him to write a poem that was like a hidden pearl and detailing the love story of Layla and Majnun. Another request which the Shah made was that the poem should be as long as his lineage, which was very long. So the Shah wanted a long poem. And probably that is the reason for Nizami's poem having approximately 4,000 plus verses. Now, as we read, Masnavi does not restrict you in terms of length of a verse. So you are already having the permission to write a long verse, and then you land up writing 4,000 plus verses. That's a long poem. That's a very long poem. It is said, initially Nizami was not excited or encouraged by the task sent his way by Shah. Because obviously at that point in time, this story was just an Arabic folk tale. And Arabia, as we know, is not a landscape you could set up a romance against, right? It is arid, it is dry, it is tough. No gardens, no flowers, no all those, romantic nuances which bring the color and the sound and the scent of the romance to the table. So Nizami was not very keen because according to him, this love story, sure it is from Arabia, but it is, first of all, it is not well documented. Most of it is oral and has been just passed down by people, right? So different iterations, different versions, everybody has their own version. And secondly, it is set against a landscape which is not very conducive to the romance that a love story would demand when you start putting it to paper. But it was Nizami's 14-year-old son, Muhammad, who encouraged him to rethink. First of all, Muhammad told him, this is Shah's request come order. So I would highly recommend you do not refuse it. And secondly, Muhammad encouraged Nizami to take a shot at it. One of the story goes that Muhammad brought to Nizami a manuscript from somewhere of the Layla-e-Majnun story, probably an Arabic manuscript, probably one of many that were floating around, undocumented, no authentic audit trail, so to speak. But the son did get him something to work with or something to start working with. And probably this manuscript contained some of the Kitas written by Majnu himself. And yes, Majnu was a poet. So was Layla. But that is for another episode. We will get into that aspect. For now, Nizami's son got him some material to get him started. And Nizami, thus inspired, achieved an extraordinary activity. Within a short time, Nizami completed this masterwork of love poetry with a comprehensive layout and connected execution of multiple parts. एंड काबिल गौर यहाँ पे बात है मल्टीपल पार्ट्स. ये मल्टीपल पार्ट्स क्या हैं? These multiple parts probably would be all the existing Arabic folk tales, folklores, kitas, poetry, and manuscript from all over. And Nizami had, in my humble opinion, a Herculean task to get all these together, collate them. All of them would have their own version and iteration of the story, and form this bare bone skeletal structure of a story. And it seems he did that. And on this skeletal structure, he built his epic saga with many a contribution from his imagination and his genius creativity alone. So, Nizami rightly not only translated but completely transformed the existing Arabic folktale into a masterpiece. Now, this masterpiece created by Nizami till today remains unsurpassed, despite various famous works by various famous poets who have been inspired by Nizami's works. Poets like Hatifi, Jami, Fuzuli. So it was indeed a daunting task, and Nizami delivered it with an aplomb that is worthy of a genius. In his own words, this is what Nizami says about delivering this masterpiece. These 4,000 couplets and some more I wrote in less than months, numbering 4. If I'd not been held up by another occupation, 14 nights may have seen its completion. Typical confident genius. Again, brings to mind Ghalib, right? वो गालिबाना स्टाइल है यहाँ पर कि 4 महीने से कम में लिखी है ये पोएम, बट अगर किसी और काम में इन्वॉल्व ना होता तो ये काम मैं 14 दिन में कर सकता था. 14 दिन में 4,000 प्लस वर्सेस की पोएम विच विल गो ऑन टू बिकम अ मास्टरपीस. गालिब के वो शेर याद आ रहे हैं ना कि हैं और भी दुनिया में सुखनवर बहुत अच्छे, कहते हैं कि गालिब का है अंदाज़े बयां, और या पूछते हैं वो कि गालिब कौन है, कोई बतलाओ हमको, हम बतलाएं क्या. या आ गही दामेश नींदर जिस कदर चाहे बिछाए, मुद्दा अनका है अपने आलम तकरीर का. गालिब का भी ये स्टाइल था. आई मीन ही वॉज नॉट ओनली अ जीनियस but he was a confident genius. He had confidence in his work. Not overconfidence, not arrogance, just 100% confidence that what I'm bringing to the table is the best. It has never been created before and it will never be recreated thereafter. This is it. And that's why it's a masterpiece. So moving on. It is impossible to ignore the impact of Nizami's Layla and Majnu on poets. Poets who have copied or been influenced by Nizami's story for almost 800 years now. Master poets like Attar, Rumi, Sadi, Hafiz, and Jami have either quoted or leveraged this love story as an allegory for describing the Sufi concept of human love, transforming into divine love through separation and longing. Paintings, songs, plays, operas, symphonies, and movies have been influenced by Nizami's love epic. Be it Eric Clapton's song Layla, or adaptation as a play in Arabic by the Egyptian poet Ahmad Shawki, or the four-act Layla-e-Majnun opera by Azerbaijani Uzair, or Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, which is said to be influenced by Nizami's epic, you can see the impact and the influence of Nizami's work all around you. Like I said earlier, if you are reading about Layla Majnun in any form, if you are accessing the Layla Majnun story in any form today, it can be traced back to the Nizami version. Iran, or perhaps world's greatest mystical love poet Hafiz of Shiraz, in his book of the Wine Bringer, Masnavi poem says, in wisdom's opinion, there's no better adorner of poetry in this old sphere than the pearls of speech of Nizami. So, yes, poets, writers who were there with Nizami in his time and the ones who came thereafter all do conclude that, yes, Nizami's impact and influence as far as this story goes is unsurpassed, unmatched, and permeates anything and everything to do with this immortal love story. Now, though Nizami translated the original Arabic story to Persian, eliminating some of the language limitations and extending it to audience beyond the Arabic-speaking audience, the story still was inaccessible to most of the world, including the Western world. This changed around the 18th and 19th century, when Nizami's work started getting translated into English. The top 5 translations that are available to us, or that we know of, are as follows. 1797, Isaac D. Israeli. 1836, James Atkinson. 1905, L. Cranmer Bing. Bing's version is an edited version of Atkinson. 1966, Rudolph Gelpke. 2017, Paul Smith. 2020, Dick Davis. 3 of these are still in print. Now, other than the Isaac D. Israeli and Rudolph Gelpke's prose translated adaptations, the rest of them are rhyming verse translations. So they are in the poetry form. It is only the Isaac D. Israeli and Rudolph Gelpke's version, which is prose. For our mini series, DGMZ has picked Rudolph Gelpke's prose adaptation. DGMZ's focus for this mini series is indeed Nizami Ganjavi's Layla-e-Majnun, but not the original Persian version. We needed a version that could help share the complete story with DGMZ viewers in simple, comprehensive, and beautifully articulated English language. In DGMZ's humble opinion, Rudolph Gelpke's English translation, published by Suluk Press, is one of the best out there for this purpose. DGMZ would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate Suluk Press Publishing House for allowing us to narrate the story from their publication titled The Story of Layla-e-Majnun Nizami, translated from the Persian and edited by Rudolph Gelpke, English version in collaboration with E. Matin and G. Hill, final chapter translated from the Persian by Pir Zia Inayat Khan and Umid Safi. Now, you can, if you go to the description of this episode, get a link to this book for anybody who wants to own a copy. In addition, we will also put links to the DGMZ Ghazal episodes where Ghalib mentions Layla Majnun. Now, like we said, we are going to use the story of Layla and Majnun by Nizami, translated from the Persian and edited by Rudolph Gelpke by Suluk Press, as the book we will narrate from in this mini-series. This book starts with two beautifully crafted prefaces. The first preface is crafted by Rudolph Gelpke, and the second one is crafted by Zia Inayat Khan. Now, both these prefaces are beautiful and essential tools to set up the landscape for the reader to understand and appreciate the genius of Nizami's work that transformed this Arabic folk tale into a poetic masterpiece. Though we will not go through the complete prefaces, we will definitely narrate key portions in the following narration. So let us shift to the book now and go through these two prefaces, which will nicely prep us for the future chapters from this book. Bear with me, I am just getting settled here for the narration. Okay. Start of narration. Translator's preface. Among the legendary love stories of the Islamic Orient, that of Layla and Majnun is probably the best known. The two lovers live up to this day in poems, songs, and epics of many tribes and nations, from the Caucasus to the interior of Africa, from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. Are these legends based on truth? has this Bedouin youth, Cas, from the North Arabic tribe of Amir, named Majnu, madman, ever lived and suffered for his Layla? We cannot be certain, but there are good reasons to believe that he did. Probably in the second half of the 7th century AD, somewhere in the western half of the Arabic Peninsula, about 500 years before, AD 1188, the year in which the Persian poet Nizami wrote his poem. Nizami, while preserving the main facts, made many important additions. The scene in the garden, Naufal's attack against Layla's tribe, her refusal to consummate her marriage, Majnu's rule over the animals, the visit of his mother and his uncle, the story of the youth from Baghdad, the death of Layla's husband, as well as the fables and meditations, are either not to be found at all in the Arabic sources or only in rudimentary form. It is interesting to observe how Nizami preserves the Bedouin atmosphere, the nomads' tents in the desert, and the tribal customs of the inhabitants, while at the same time transposing the story into the far more civilized Iranian world. The aridity and harshness of the surroundings are framed, as it were, by beautiful descriptions of the starred sky and rising sun, or the deepest secrets of the human soul in a language unbelievably rich with most precious images. In the Arabic sources, the background is nearly empty. Nizami frees the story from the limitations of a merely accidental event by lifting it to an altogether higher spiritual level and enriches it by his love of colors, scents, and sounds, by embellishing it playfully with jewels, flowers, and fruits. Majnu's father becomes a sultan of the Arabs and is at the same time like Korah the wealthy. Layla walks in a rose garden under cypress trees where nightingales sing in the bushes. Majnu talks to the planets in the symbolic language of a 12th century Persian sage. The encounters of small Arabic raiding parties become gigantic battles of royal Persian armies. And most of the Bedouin talk like the heroes, courtiers, and servants of the refined Iranian civilization. Far more important than the dramatic events of the story is the inner meaning of the work whose stage is Majnu's soul. What we mistake for a padlock to keep us out, we may tomorrow find to be the key that lets us in. And every leaf in the book of fate has 2 pages. One is written by man, the other by fate. Whatever this poet touches becomes transparent and reveals its hidden meaning. To his Arabic biographers, Majnu is suffering from an illness, a broken man who has lost his way, to be reproached, pitied, or derided. Nizami understands the 3 elements of the traditional Majnu: his love, his insanity, and his poetical genius, as 3 aspects of one indivisible unity. Only when he is driven out of the paradise of his early love does Majnu become both insane and a poet. Insanity and poetical genius are two expressions of the same state of mind, of a soul estranged in the world of men. And the same people who reproach, pity, and deride Majnu because of his insanity memorize and admire his poetry. Has the tragic ambiguity of the artist's position in the world, the paradox of unbounded desire in a limited body, ever been described more aptly? On the other hand, it would be wrong to consider Majnu's and Layla's fate as tragic in the Western sense of the word. That there could be no fulfillment of their love on earth is a foregone conclusion for Nizami's mysticism. His Layla states clearly that in the religion of love, close intimacy is perilous. If, therefore, our lovers' sufferings are not tragic, they must also not be interpreted from a point of view of conventional morals. The lover's grief breaks through the limitations of human nature, enabling them to become free of their self, which is tied to the transitory world. Death is the gate to the real world, to the home which our wandering soul desires. And the poet reveals this truth in brilliant, ever-changing metaphors. The light-giving candle sheds bitter tears. The oyster suffers because of its pearl. The ruby longs to be freed from the rock in which it is hidden. The fading rose becomes a drop of precious rose water. Majnu eats the eater in himself. Overcoming hunger, egoism, and possessiveness, and crushing the bazaar of sensual lust to become the king of love in majesty. Not that everybody could reach this exalted state simply by falling in love. Inconstant love, says Nizami, remains but a toy of the senses and perishes like youth. R. Gelpke. Preface to 1997 edition. I emanated upon thee a force of love, that you might be fashioned according to my glance. Quran 20:39. High romance blossomed in the cool shade of nascent Islam as manliness, the rugged code of the desert, yielded to Udri love, a tender-hearted chivalry inspired by Platonic eros. The axial figure in this revolution of the heart was Qais bin Mulawwah, called Majnu, the madman. Naked among the beasts, deliriously singing his love for Layla, whose name means night, Majnu became the sovereign emperor of love. Absorbed in the beauty of his beloved Layla, Majnu seems to have transcended his own biography and become the rubric for a whole gamut of lyrics and episodes, betokening the madness of separation in love. As the quintessential romantic fool, haunting the arid wastelands of the world of images, Majnu is deeply resonant and rhetorically potent archetypal figure. In the rhapsodies of oral traditionists and storytellers, Ravis, from Umayyad times to the present day, Majnu features as an endearingly pathetic anti-hero crushed between the claims of society and the claims of the heart. For the belletrists and aesthetes, adibs of Islamdom, the love-crazed poet epitomizes the ideals of emotional sensitivity and fidelity. Highlighting Plato's theorization of love as a divine madness, Junoon Ilahi, the psychology of Udri love recognizes Majnu's madness as an erotico-mystical condition rather than a pathological one. Presumed insane, the madman of Layla is said to have protested, "Love is greater than madness." Unlike the poets, soothsayers, and madmen of the pagan heroic age, it is no jinn which possesses Majnu, but the incomparably more overwhelming force of pure love. To the Sufis, Majnu represents the perfect devotee of the religion of the heart. In the fervor of his passion, they discern a semblance of the Quranic maxim, "The faithful are ardent in their love for Allah." Ardor in love, Ashad al-Hub, became Ishq in the parlance of Hallaj, who was crucified for uttering, "I am the truth," Ana al-Haq. Just as mystics believe, Majnu was to finally pronounce, "I am Layla." It was probably in the ecstatic sermons of Hallaj's friend Shibli, a frequent inmate of madhouses, that the romance of Layla and Majnu first took the shape of a spiritual parable. Since those early days in Baghdad, Layla and Majnu have occupied a hallowed place in the mytho-poetic universe of Sufi lore. In his book of profound meditations on Ishq, the Savani, Ahmad Ghazali suggests that it was not family politics, but Majnu's inability to remain conscious in the presence of Layla that kept the tragic lovers apart. Ghazali's brilliant disciple, the mystic martyr N. al-Quzat, speaks of Layla's beauty as bait in a trap set out by the eternal hunter to snare Majnu's heart and make it a steed for love. Through the pedagogy of human love, the heart is prepared for divine love and ultimately for the vision of God unveiled. It is said that when someone tried to dissuade Majnu from his obsessive love of Layla, arguing that she was really rather plain, Majnu replied, "My Layla must be seen with my eyes." Let us now borrow Majnu's tear-soaked, bloodshot eyes and look on the ethereal beauty of Layla. Zia Inayat Khan. End of narration. What beautiful prefaces, both by Rudolph Gelpke and Zia Inayat Khan, setting us up, prepping us to get into this story. I do hope you enjoyed the introduction to the mini-series and the narration of these prefaces in today's episode. If you did, do click like, This is first of its kind mini series at DGMZ. So we would love to hear your feedback. We would love to hear your comments on how it came across to you. Did you enjoy it? Can we do something to make it better? In the next episode, we will get into the chapters one by one. We will narrate the chapters from the book, and wherever possible, wherever required, do a small impression of the chapters towards the end. Just to remind you, the link of the book is available in the description box. So are the links to the Ghazal episodes, where Ghalib brings in the story of Layla-e-Majnun under various contexts. So feel free to access those links and enjoy that content. And if you want to own a copy, go ahead and get one for yourself. That's all we have for this episode. Now, let me send a lot of love and light to all you, my dear viewers, and thanks for watching.